Hello, my friends. Thank you for joining me once again at Evolutionary Energy Arts. We have so many things going on here. It's almost impossible to keep up with it all. Do you remember the Hawaii ballistic missile threat inbound alert to seek immediate shelter? Yeah, this is not a drill, and then, it turned out that it wasn't, or was it? Did the good guys shoot it down as it was incoming? And if that's the case, what was going on. Then we had the same sort of thing coming from Japan. A missile was fired from North Korea. Please evacuate. Craziness. And we don't know really what happened there either yet, or if ever we will. Then we had the tsunami warning up and down the East Coast, all the way from Boston to Florida and many places in between, down into the Caribbean. Craziness, right? Oh, we got another. There's another one that happened, and this one is a false emergency evacuation alert for Kern County in California. And in case you're not familiar with where Kern County is, it's basically just north of Los Angeles, like in the Bakersfield area. And so anyway, another one that came through, and again, they said, it was a mistake. It was supposed to just be like a test, a regular weekly broadcast. And oops, we screwed up. Sorry. Wow, people are really screwing up a lot lately, aren't they? I mean, what is going on? Is this people in the know trying to give us warnings and heads up? And what type of thing will we be worrying about in that area? Earthquake? Volcanoes? Perhaps. It seems like these false alerts are running now, kind of covering a big portion of the earth and a big portion of all that could possibly go wrong. So what is going on here? Is this, people in the know? Some insiders saying, hey, we know stuff you don't know. And so we got to let the people know something's going on or where to look. Very interesting stuff. I mean, we've had such craziness going on right now that it truly is just mind-boggling. The polar vortex just split in two. Get ready for some wild weather from Europe to the US, as if we haven't had that already. We have record highs going on right next to record lows. We have record flooding going on. The weather is crazy. And I mean, we have always said, at all ages, we've always said, the weather's crazy. It's a statement you make, when the weather is something out of the usual. Well, it truly is crazy now. I don't think there's anybody that can say, oh, no, it's always like this. This is just normal. So what do they mean, the polar vortex split? Well, the polar vortex generally sits over the North Pole area. There's one up in the Arctic and there's one down in the Antarctic. And I watch this Null School site, earth.nullschool.net, on a daily basis, and it's been split for a little while now, at least a week, if not more. And it's a really interesting pattern. And one thing that immediately hits me with the way the pattern is going is that if this thing ever lasted long, like into spring, or if this develops in the spring and hangs around for a while in the spring, I would think we're going to be in serious trouble, because it's actually warmer right now at the geographical North Pole than it is in many parts of Canada and Siberia. And this is a great website where you could check temperatures and everything. It really is fabulous. And it'll give you different layers of the atmosphere. and really give you a clue of what's going on here, so you can monitor it yourself. And on this map, the coldest temperatures are usually kind of like a violet color. And so we could see in some of the islands in northern Canada temperatures of 33 degrees below actual temps, 39 degrees below. And this is not, this is quite a ways south of Greenland and south of the actual geographical North Pole, which really is at like 17 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's actually above zero. 21 degrees in some areas here, way up in the actual geographic North Pole. And then we also have extremely cold temperatures over in Russia and in Northern Europe. 26 below, 35 below actual temps, 27 below, 24 below, extending pretty far down. So very interesting, really interesting when you're looking at it. And when you look at some of the temperatures, it's 35 degrees off the coast of Greenland, off the northern coast of Greenland. That makes me worry about melting of the ice sheets up there. Because if a pattern like that continued, it could definitely spell disaster. And it's really so amazing how the warm temps are going so far up. 36 degrees north of Iceland, way north of Iceland, really, up into the Arctic Circle. And yet it's way colder, many degrees farther south. So we have some serious change going on here. If this isn't, I'm just a lay person with this, but if this is not an indication of a pole shift, then I don't know. It seems like we are definitely watching serious changes going on. Not Al Gore changes, but real changes. And you just have to wonder how long it's going to stay. Now, when you think about the polar vortex splitting in two, I wonder if there's some sort of geomagnetic reason for this. Because the sun, when it's having a pole shift and its poles are going to flip, sometimes there will be two north poles and two south poles that develop spontaneously. You will have this in the sun, and I wonder if the same holds true for the earth potentially, until equilibrium comes and we find a new balancing point. We know that there's huge changes going on. This is not just one little blip, one little aberration. This is what was talked about from Edgar Cayce and some others from time long ago. And exactly what Edgar Cayce, for one, said, it really does look like he's right on the nose with things. And we'll see if that pans out. Most people were thinking that it was going to happen more like around the 90s and 2000s. But it appears that things are really happening now as far as the Earth changes. And again, we have cold spells that are shattering temperature records in Washington right now, Montana, all over the West. And the reason is because of this polar vortex split. So right now it's kind of like we have two North Poles. There's one sitting in Siberia and there's one sitting, over Canada. That's what it looks like when you actually look at it. Because when we go to the South Pole, it's unified. And it's summer in the southern hemisphere still. And we have some seriously cold temps going on down there. 53 degrees below, 54 degrees below, almost 55 degrees below zero. So the southern hemisphere doesn't look abnormal, although it does have some intense cold temps going. But the northern hemisphere looks bizarre. And we're seeing it weather-wise. So right now with that dip that we had in the polar vortex, you got serious records being shattered. And we had it both ways. We had serious warm weather records going on in the East Coast. Absolutely crazy. In Europe, same thing. Record-setting cold. Europe's record-setting cold weather just switched directions and is heading for the U.S. now. So get ready. Winter's not over, people. And with the volcanoes going off and the potential for more volcanoes going off, and I would lay money on it, the summer will be probably very cool. And some people are calling for a summer that won't really be a summer. It'll be more like spring and fall temperatures that never quite gets to summer. So we shall see, and that's more for the northern latitudes. We have flooding that's continuing, massive flooding now going on. Now the Mississippi is going to have tremendous flooding because there's well over 100 tributaries that flow into the Mississippi, and we have tremendous flooding going on. Michigan, Indiana, Wisconsin, as you could see. Pretty crazy flooding. And Casey talked about all this too. Tuesday's record warmth long gone, but the region's river flooding persists. And this is Toledo. All through the Midwest. All eyes on the Illinois River. Here it's a major flood, but it doesn't appear to be quite a record yet. Temperatures plummet as record rainfall freezes and floods on Wednesday morning. So this is in the Chicago area. Record flooding and then the deep freeze settling in. So nice deep ice to skate on. So what is going on with the other aspects of this, such as earthquakes? Well, there's a lot going on. And, California is swarming. The whole West is swarming. There is so much activity going on out in the western part of the country. Of course, we always have fracking going on in Oklahoma, but tons and tons of earthquakes going on in the western part and also in Alaska. Alaska swarming. Still, we have a lot of the usual places that are experiencing a lot of earthquake activity. Of course, the Ring of Fire. And Greece had several earthquakes this week. I remember seeing at least 4 of them as the plates there have been active really everywhere. The Mid-Atlantic Ridge, New Zealand, tons of course over in Chile and in Peru and Ecuador and Bolivia. I mean, you name it, there's a lot of activity. There is a volcanic swarm to be aware of going on over in Iceland. That is definitely something to keep our eyes on. There's potential there. And closer to home here in the U.S., we have a lot going on as well. Probably one of the most scary things, at least it's the one that always makes me have a little sick feeling in the pit of my stomach, is the Canary Islands, La Palma. And there's been a flurry of earthquakes over there. And the fear is, and scientists have done basically peer-reviewed studies that show that if La Palma went, it would cause a huge tsunami that would affect the entire East Coast, and not only that, but also Europe too, everywhere from UK to France and Spain. It would be completely disastrous, and then the East Coast of the US, would just be completely inundated with a mega tsunami that could literally roll miles inland. So it would be one of the scariest scenarios that we could think of, and that's one to definitely keep your eye on. Now, this is off of InfoWars, but there's many other sources talking about the same stuff, so this is for real. And this is saying major eruption imminent, ? Earthquake swarms reported at Mount Hood, Mount Rainier, and Mount St. Helens. All of them. Things are seriously heating up. Scary stuff, but remember, no fear. And we'll get to that a little bit later. And Yellowstone, seismic swarm reflects changes in stress along small faults. So Yellowstone is swarming as well. All the areas active. And we know we're going to have a ton of volcanic activity going on. And that is going to increase the cold temperatures. So I'll be honest with you, I definitely do not, I don't want to have any fear, but as far as like listing the things I'm concerned about, the mini ice age is not at the top of my list. Really, I'm much more concerned with what's going on with the pole shift. And there are those people that, again, will say pole shift does not mean crustal displacement. It doesn't mean anything more, according to some people, that the magnetic field changes and nothing happens to the actual Earth. But we could see that at the very least you're going to have increased earthquakes and volcanic activity. Whether or not an actual crustal displacement event happens or not, you are going to have tremendous earthquakes and volcanic activity, and that is happening. We could see it. It's really happening. Edgar Cayce was an amazing healer, really. I mean, that's the thing that he did, was he would go into his trance and he would tell what was wrong with people miles away. He would say, the subject has pain under the left rib, sensing the spleen overactive, take this herb, it'll help purify the blood. Or, he would know there's something going on with the liver, take this and do this. He could tell exactly what was going on in people's body and give them a natural cure for it in a trance. They discovered during these readings that he could tap into much more than that. And he ended up doing many, many readings talking about the earth changes that were coming. And the earth changes that were coming that he talked about included complete changes in weather patterns all over the globe. Just everything is going to be so different. Pole shift. He did talk about pole shift. Volcanic and earthquake activity will increase. Weather patterns changing are going to cause catastrophic earth changes. So there's a lot of scary in here, for sure. But there is a silver lining too. And the main silver lining is that when we get through all this, he said that the world will be as one. So the world is going to come out of this unified, and then it's not going to be what we had anymore. It's not going to be all this warring and just, fighting amongst ourselves. We're going to come out of this a unified people and a much more cooperative people. And also, he spoke about a new consciousness that was going to arise. However, just like a dirty dog you got to put in the bathtub and wash off, the earth is going to need to cleanse itself. So that is part of what's going on here. The Earth changes are almost like a dog shaking the fleas off of itself. And so it's something that is coming and is now here, and we're into the beginning stages of it. And some of the things he talked about was temperature changes in deep waters, which are going to impact weather patterns, earthquakes, pole shifts, volcanic eruptions. In one reading, he was asked how weather patterns would impact future wheat crops. Casey described the changes that caused the Pacific Ocean's deep currents to run warmer than normal, the patterns known as El Nino. And then he also talked about La Nina. The weather changes occur every 3 to 7 years, but currently there's no technology that can forecast when the next one will. That's not all he talked about. He did talk about the sun, changes in the sun. He did talk about the pole shift. And he got into the pole shift quite a bit. And he did talk about the magnetic force, the magnetosphere that protects the Earth and every living thing from radiation storms that regularly sweep across the planet. The alarming news that the magnetic force field is weakening was predicted by Casey, so he's right there. He talked about this, and this is way back in the 30s. He talked about this. Now we have evidence, but then we really didn't so much. So he said there's going to be a great shifting of the poles that's going to herald in the dawn of a new age. The change began in the South Atlantic Ocean between Africa and South America. That's the South Atlantic anomaly that we talk about. That's an area of increased radiation because of basically a low area of the magnetosphere where it's just not strong enough to block out all the radiation that's coming in. And so there's going to be more of those zones developing where there's basically like holes in the magnetosphere for energy to come through. So this is something to be aware of again. The magnetic field has decreased over 10% in the last decade. And the shifting of the poles has caused occurrences, inaccuracies in GPS, and it's got to be recalibrated. We just talked about Australia running away. It moved so far so fast that they had to go recalibrate it in just like a 20-year period. That's pretty damn quick. In 2011, Tampa International Airport closed the main runway for a week in order to adjust taxiways and signage to the new magnetic pole direction. So all you people said, oh, you're crazy about the sun, being in a different position and all. Well, yeah, maybe they weren't so crazy. So he didn't give specific dates, but he did say when things were going to happen. And one of them is watching Mount Pelee and Mount Etna. For when they go off at the same time, then we know it's upon us. It's really upon us. So when those two volcanoes erupt together, there will be about 90 days to evacuate the west coast before the massive flood claims the coastline. And he did say that Japan's going to go into the ocean entirely, and that California is going to be pretty much wiped out. And there was going to be new land that's going to arise in certain areas. So it's a scientific fact that the Earth's magnetic poles constantly move, but over the past decades the rate of movement has vastly increased. According to NASA, the rate of movement has gone from 10 kilometers a year to 40 kilometers a year. At this rate, it will exit North America as far as the North Pole and reach Siberia in a couple decades. So getting into, again, some of the changes. New lands are going to appear in the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. They're going to rise up. Coastal areas are going to become ocean beds. Many of the battlefields of the present will be ocean, will be seas, bays, and lands over which the new order will carry on their trade as one with another. Along the eastern seaboard, portions of the east coast of New York or New York City itself will in the main disappear. Now he said there will be another generation though, so it's not as if it all happens boom in a twinkling of an eye. It's kind of a thing that progresses. Southern portions of the Carolinas and Georgia will disappear, and that's going to be sooner than New York. The waters of the lakes, the Great Lakes, are going to empty into the Gulf. So basically the Mississippi River is going to become more like a sea. It's going to just extend much, much larger, all the way from the Great Lakes into the Gulf. Virginia Beach is going to be safe. He also says during this time of the Great Lakes emptying that portions of Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio will be safe. In addition, the southern and eastern portions of Canada will survive, but the western part of the U.S. and Canada, much of that is to be disturbed. And Casey advises his client about California, saying Los Angeles, San Francisco, most of all of these will be among those that are destroyed before New York even. And he talks about Japan sinking in the sea. He also talks about the upper portion of Europe that's going to be changed instantly with displacement of oceans and rivers. And that he talked about in a twinkling of an eye, like it was going to happen very fast. And that's going to be northern Europe. And then as far as earthquake activity, going to be a big increase. He said that when Vesuvius or Pele volcanoes become active, the southwest coast of California and the areas between Salt Lake and the southern portions of Nevada may expect within 3 months following same an inundation by earthquakes. He also stated that earthquake activity will be much stronger in the southern hemisphere than the northern. And so, very, very, very interesting. But he did also talk about a change in consciousness. And one of his instructions is that he did say nothing is written in stone. And he was always reminding people that prayer and positive thinking, consciousness can alter the dire future. And perhaps it has forestalled it, because so many thought this was going to happen more like in the 90s and early 2000s. And so if it's just starting now, perhaps some of the positive things that are going on in the world, because there are some seriously positive spiritual revivals going on, spiritual revelations, people awakening, because we are also getting bombarded by so much more energy. And if you watched my video on the CIA and their research into it, this is increasing our psychic ability. This is increasing our intuition. This is what has been talked about as ascension, and basically a spiritual growth where humanity is going to shift in consciousness and change. And it's been foretold. Just, look in, for you Bible believers, look in the Bible. And of course we have all the dire prophecies in the Bible, but we also have, St. Paul saying, "Lo, I will tell you a secret. We shall not all die, but we shall all be changed." And he goes on talking about the corruptible will put on the incorruptible. So he's talking about a shift in vibrations, a shift in consciousness. He's talking about ascension. And ascension is the lesson to be learned in this lifetime by everybody. We can change things. And Edgar Casey said that too. I mean, he saw all this. And all this is what can happen if we allow ourselves to go down the negative path and allow ourselves to be manipulated. So when we look at some of the maps about what he's talking about, I mean, it's going to be hard to recognize. We could still make out the United States, but he's talking about so much of the West gone. And it's going to fall due to volcanism, volcanoes going off, massive earthquakes, like we're talking 9+, floods, all sorts of things going on. And again, we can mitigate this with our consciousness. there's an article that this is an interesting article about pole shifts and how they're supposed to happen every 200,000 years, although it's been 780,000, so we're way overdue, right? But sometimes there are the beginnings of a pole shift, and it doesn't take. And perhaps that's what happened, and perhaps that's why this has gone from being a 200,000 year event to 780,000. Perhaps others in some more advanced societies than us even used their intention to forestall these things. And so the poles wandered. They were going to flip, but they never did. Perhaps we could do that again. So perhaps there's more hope, and it's not all doom and gloom. As we know from quantum physics, it's all about the observer. Things truly only manifest when we notice. There are so many new studies coming out that point to the fact that we might even just live in one big computer simulation of some incredibly advanced AI system, artificial intelligence system. And if you look at Gnosticism, you could see that. I mean, it would make a lot of sense. And even the mystery traditions, there's a lot of hints of along those lines. Reality is pliable. And if we are heading up into higher dimensions, think of it in terms of dreaming. We are in this 3D reality right here. When we dream, we go up into the astral realm. We go up into like a 4D reality. Perhaps our destiny is to be in a 5D reality. Now in the 4D reality, things are more fluid. So if we're in a dream and we suddenly recognize that we're in our dream, and we take control of that dream, and maybe you're in the dream and the plane is going down, and in your dream you say, shoot, I know I'm sleeping right now, I'm gonna change this plane's not crashing. And you just do a couple spins, and you got your cape on and you're Superman, and you go out and you pick up the plane and you just bring it down to a nice gentle landing. Well, perhaps that's the type of reality that we are shifting to. Every day, I know for one, I feel more energy every single day. Every single day I could feel stronger and stronger, the energy all around me. And I'm meeting people that are experiencing the same thing. I met yesterday a lady that had a Kundalini experience. And I've met a few people with Kundalini experiences, and they experience the world much differently than somebody that doesn't have their Kundalini awakened. And Kundalini awakening is real. And the energy that surges through the person is tremendous. It's amazing. And so I laid my hand on her to feel her energy and sense what is there. And I could feel the fire just go straight into my fingers and start crawling up my wrists, my hands, up into my forearms. The power surge in her was insane. And I felt that before in a few other people. And that was given to her by her yogi. And she is a European that went and spent time in India and had it awakened by a yogi who was himself awakened. And so your perception when the Kundalini rises is completely different, because you're seeing into realms. It's like taking a mushroom or some sort of psychedelic substance, but it's a natural thing that's within all of us. But the reality you experience is more like that, and that's the real reality. Because our pineal glands have been shut down on purpose with fluoride and amongst other things and low vibrational living. And it's been done on purpose. They do it with the chemtrails. Because when our consciousness expands, then, and when I say those, I mean the Cabal, the Illuminati, the powers that be, the half of 1% that have been controlling reality for us. They know we're awakening. They know that they're going to have 7.6 billion super people on their hands, supermen and superwomen. And they don't want that. They can't have that. They can't have a population that is awakened and can see through the lies and can see through the matrix. So that is why they do the things they do, because they live the big life here. You know, they control everybody and everything. And ultimately, as Edgar Casey said, they're going to lose that, because we're going to go through a revival and an evolution of consciousness, and that is part of what's going on here. It's change that has to happen. It's necessary for us. It's necessary for the earth too, for the health and well-being of the earth, because, you know, face it, a lot of times man acts as if he's a nasty virus. Man can definitely act like a cancer upon the earth. And we must change our ways and get into a symbiotic relationship with the earth, in which we are both benefiting from each other. And then we won't have these type of earth changes, because we're going to be in harmony. We'll be able to mitigate all this. And there's powerful help there on the other side that wants to help us. And I don't care what you view it as, whether you view it as, you know, any sort of label you want to. You could put any deity's name on there. You could just call it spirit. You could just say they're ascended masters or angels or aliens, you know, good ETs like Pleiadians. Whatever you want to call them, it's fine. Because the help that's on the other side, you know, I don't really think they're partial to the labels that man gives. And ultimately, we're all part of something much bigger. So what we have going on is an awakening in man. And the earth changes are just a part of it. So we need to realize our power, our creative ability. We need to recognize the consciousness that we hold within us, and start by giving away and just getting rid of anything that's negative. Don't let yourself be caught in their traps. And when they try to play the Democrats against the Republicans, the conservatives against the liberals, when they try to play the racial card, I mean, spirit has no race. Our souls don't have a race. You know, it's this crazy thinking. Everything is energy. Energy can't be created or destroyed. It only changes form. Your consciousness will always go on. It's imperative that we raise it. So I thank you all for joining me. As always, please thumbs up, subscribe, and share. Help others wake up. This is our mission. This is why you are here. This is why I am here. We're here to help each other up through this time. The most important thing is raising our consciousness. The most important thing is holding love and peace in our heart. The most important thing is helping each other. So we don't give in to the fear. We don't give in to the conflict. We don't give in to all the BS that they feed us. Enjoy every single day. Be in the now. That is the most important thing. Enjoy the people that you are sharing your day with. Show them love, honor, and respect. Realize that we're all part of one big family. And shed all the crap that they indoctrinate us with. And we will get through this, and we'll come out a more unified people in a much, much better world, one that actually could be heaven on earth. Thank you all so much, and I will talk to you all again very, very soon. Take care.